Good evening, all. This is a meeting of the Somerville Historic Preservation Commission. It's Tuesday, November 17th, 2020, and the time is 6:52 p.m. I'm sorry that we are 7 minutes late. Apologies, that was a technical issue. So tonight, what I'd like to start off with is having everybody introduce themselves, so that anybody that's from the public that's listening will know exactly who we are. My name is Alan Bingham. I'm the chair of the commission. I've been a commissioner for a number of years. I live in Ward 6 and I'm a historic homeowner. Adam.
My name is Adam Wiley. Oh, no, I'm not on mute, sorry. My name is Adam Wiley. I am a resident of Ward 2 and I am a construction manager and builder.
Eric.
I'm Eric Parks. I'm a resident of Ward 3 and an architect.
And Robin.
Hi, I'm Robin Kelly. I am the Realtor representative on the commission, and I'm a historic homeowner in Union Square.
And Ryan. Hello, Ryan. You're on mute.
Ryan.
Sorry, I was muted. My name is Ryan Falvey, and I am a resident of Ward 2.
And staff.
I'm Sarah White. I'm a preservation planner and zoning planner for the city of Somerville.
Good. Well, I'd like to move on to the agenda. The first thing we have is a determination of preferably preserved. And the first thing we have is HMO.DMO.2020.18, which is 40 Dickinson Road, which is an application that was put in to demolish a structure, which will not be heard. So I'd like to take a vote on that we will not hear that tonight. All those in favor of that, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And I'll just do a roll call so we can document that because we can't see a show of hands. Adam?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
And I say yes too. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Sorry, two quick things. Could you formally continue it to the December 15th meeting? And I do have an update for you, which is we did receive a signed written statement from the applicant that they will be withdrawing their demolition request. However, that was received after the agenda was posted. It wasn't received until late yesterday, so we'll have to take that withdrawal into consideration on the 15th.
Oh dear. Okay. Then let's take a motion to continue this until the December meeting, which is next month, at which time we'll review the documentation that's come in. All those in favor? Aye.
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 And once again, Adam?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
And I say yes too. Okay, it's carried. So make sure it gets on the agenda for December, Sarah.
It is. You got it.
Nice, sweetheart.
Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is HPC.DMO 2020.21, which is 211 Holland Street. And this is an application for preferably preserved. This came before the commission last month as a determination of significance, and it was determined to be significant. And for those that are listening in the public, let me explain the process to you so that you understand. This was an application that was received prior to the change in the demolition review ordinance. And the process is that when somebody wants to demolish a building which is over 50 years old in the city, it comes before the commission for a determination of significance, of historical significance. And that significance can be an architectural or an association with the person or the culture of the city, or a combination of both, or some other factor that makes it invaluable to the city to be able to be preserved. Now, if we determine it to be significant, then basically we have findings as to why we do that. And those findings are based on the what is laid down by the Secretary of the Interior and the National Park Service. So we are basing this on objective criteria, not our own basic gut feel as to whether it looks good or not. And the significance doesn't necessarily determine whether it's a wonderful, beautiful piece of architecture. It might be a very humble workers' cottage, which we see as being valuable to the city because of the culture of the city and the history of the city. Now, when it comes to preferably preserved, we look at what that preferably preserved is. And in preferably preserved, this could mean anything from a complete retention and restoration of the building moving forward and leaving it in situ, down to, at the worst case, a demolition, which would have to be documented with archive quality illustrations and photographic records, and possibly even retaining something out of the building which has architectural elements. So if we decide then it is preferably preserved, then we have at this point in time, because it's in the old demolition review ordinance, it came in before the new one came in, we have 9 months to negotiate with the owners as to what that means. So somewhere between the continuum of it being completely held in situ and restored and kept as is, down to a photographic record and documented, is where we would look at preferably preserved. And so we come to the meeting of the minds of that. We should be satisfied in a memorandum of understanding. If we decide that it's not preferably preserved, then within the next few days, a week or so, whenever the time period is, and that could be a little bit extended because of the COVID crisis, then a release from planning would be executed, and the applicant would be able to demolish the building. And that is if we decided that it was not preferably preserved. No, so I hope that explains it adequately to all. Sarah, did you have anything to add to that explanation?
Sorry, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. No, that was fine. Thank you.
Okay, well, with that, what I'd like to do is that I'd like to open this up to the commissioners first, because this is a public hearing, and after discussing it with the commissioners, we'll take any public input if there is any. I know that we have had some emails expressing opinions. So with that, what I'd like to do.
The applicant's attorney is also here too.
I'm sorry, say again?
The applicant's attorney is also here as well.
Oh, good. So, okay, I'd like to open this up to the commissioners for comment on this. This is on 211 Holland Street. Eric, Adam, Ryan, Robin, any thoughts?
Hi, this is Robin. So I think, you know, as we discussed when we reviewed this previously, you know, I still feel the same, that it's the property retains so much of its original massing and envelope, so many of its original details, that it's a very good example and would be a shame to lose in that streetscape.
Right. Ryan, you have some thoughts on this?
I mean, I tend to, I missed the October meeting, when significance was like that, but I've read up on the case and the property. I think it's a pretty stunning looking building, and you know, for the reasons that Robin just articulated, I would support considering a preferably preserved for those reasons.
Right. And I come to Adam and Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo what everyone has said and note that there are a lot of original details. So I know some of the windows look like they've been replaced, but on the upper level, there's some original windows, and I think you don't see that shingle detail in such good shape. And there's some other architectural details, and I think for that reason, it still has a lot of its historic character and should be preferably preserved.
Eric?
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. It's in good condition. It's a good example of its style. It's in a setting where I think it's comparatively important that sort of thing be retained because it's one of a dwindling collection of older buildings not stretched the street. So it's a nice reflection of that time period. It's in good shape. I mean, it'd be silly to let this building go, I think. A good example.
Yeah, I'd like to buy in on that too. I find that for this style of building, to see the square turret is quite unusual here in Somerville. Most of those turrets are round. So this makes this somewhat unusual. And it's in a group of 4 buildings at the top that would be remaining there because we've already looked at buildings to the upper side of Teal Square, 4 buildings actually, that could be demolished. And this would be a remaining building that would fit in a series of 4. It would be really enhance that streetscape and continue to deliver that nice architectural flavor at the top of the street. Anyone have any other thoughts on this? Okay, well, with that, what I'd like to do is open this up for public comment, as this is a public meeting, and we will hear public comment on this. Sarah, could you manage the public comment side, please?
Sure. Do you want to hear from the applicant side prior to public comment?
Sure.
Okay. So with that, Adam Dash is here. Adam, I unmuted you. If you would unmute yourself, please, on your side.
Done. Are we good?
You're good.
Excellent. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Dash.
Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street, Somerville, representing Silva Realty Aid LLC, who's the owner and the applicant for this property at 211 Holland Street. Recognizing the uphill battle on this, I at least will explain that this is, if you may recall from last time, and I'll say this because Ryan wasn't here last time, that back on October 20th, we had applications for both this and for 213 Holland Street, which is the property, the house behind this. And the commission granted they did not find the 213 Holland Street house to be significant, because frankly it wasn't. And this is a situation where these 2 parcels, 213 and 211, were once one. And for some reason they got subdivided somehow, so that 213 in the back is this weird flagpole lot that's 10 feet wide at Holland Street, goes way back and then opens up with a house in the back, which is really not a tenable situation. And actually these flagpole lots are not even legal under the new zoning. So the idea was to take these 2 structures down, the 213 and 211, put the 2 parcels back together historically where they were supposed to be, and then do something rational on the property, because right now this front back thing with the 10-foot wide frontage for 213 Holland is just awkward and doesn't really work. I understand the situation and the description of the 211 Holland Street property, the house. However, the properties themselves, the way they're split is just bizarre. And as I said, we are historically going to put this back as one property for what it's worth.
Thank you, Councillor. With that, Sarah, shall we open it up for public comment?
You're muted, Sarah.
Thank you. Sorry. Anyone who has who would like to make a comment, please use the raise your hand function next to your name on your attendees list. And if your hand isn't raised, I won't call on you. If your hand is raised, I will call on you. I did see Donald Ken or Khan with his hand raised right now. What I'm going to do, Donald, is I'm going to unmute you on my side. Give me a second, and then unmute yourself on your screen, please. Go right ahead and unmute yourself. Donald? Donald, we can't hear you. Donald, we still can't hear you. You have to unmute yourself on your computer screen or your phone if you're using your phone. All right. I am going to.
This is Charlotte, another staff person speaking. I'm just here for technical support. It looks like you have unmuted yourself, but that you're on your computer and your computer may or may not actually be able to, you may or may not actually be able to speak through it. While we have other people speak, if you want to switch from using computer audio to calling in, you can go under the audio tab and switch from computer audio to phone call, and it'll give you numbers to call that will let you speak through your phone rather than through the computer, and that might help. So do that while we receive public comment from other audience members.
Okay, so the next person in line is Donald Kahn. Oh, sorry, not Donald. John Blunzik. I'm going to unmute you, and if you would unmute yourself, go right ahead.
Can you hear me? It looks like I'm unmuted already.
You are all set.
Okay. My name is John Bunzik. I live on Moore Street in Teal Square for 34 years, and a number of years ago served on the board of the Historic Preservation Commission. And I wanted to preface my comments just by noting that, by way of context, I'm a big supporter of larger, denser developments that bring housing to the city. This is desperately needed. And I mention this because I want to make sure it's understood that my opposition to demolishing this building is not based on that as a roof. This building, in my experience on the Preservation Commission, is really unique. Many of the buildings on the preserved list of the city of Somerville are not nearly retaining as such character as this building, and I think it would be a terrible loss. And unfortunately, the process involved in serving buildings and also for redevelopment, we know, or at least I know nothing about what might be coming on this group of lots, several others of which have come before the commission for approval for demolition. And I just want to point out that inelegantly designed project that overwhelms this building, should it be retained, would also be a shame. And I would really urge Silver Realty to find a way to preserve this building, possibly move it on the site to further up towards Teal Square if necessary, to rationalize their entire plan for development in this area. And I think this would be a tremendous loss. As the commission members have pointed out, it retains its character, it retains its envelope, it retains many of the windows, its massing is still there. Very unusual for a building of this age in the city of Somerville. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to try Donald Kahn again. Donald, we sent you your PIN. You need to enter it. Until you enter your PIN, we won't be able to hear you.
Donald Kahn, you are unmuted.
Oh, thank you.
Good.
Yes, I would like this be recorded as in wishing to preserve this building. My family has been on Claremont Street since the beginning of the 20th century, and this building was always sort of a landmark, especially its tower with the stained glass windows in it. And I agree with it adds to the streetscape, the four houses that would be left after the project is built. It also, besides its architectural thing, it has an association to the city of Somerville. The original owner served in Somerville's government as a council member and as alderman. And it's a landmark to the Teal Square area to the west Somerville. I don't think there's another house, another Queen Anne house in the district that it presents itself as this one does. And I would just say, incidentally, I used to be a member of the Historical Commission in Somerville. In fact, I chaired it in the late 80s. The late 70s and early 80s. So my wish is to preserve this house. I think it's an asset to not only West Somerville, but to Somerville itself.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other hands raised. However, I am going to ask each person that I see to ensure that we're capturing comment.
Sarah, this is Charlotte speaking. I do actually see Michael Panis with his hand raised.
Oh, very good.
So Michael, you are unmuted.
Thank you. I was a little worried there. So I'm a relative newcomer to Somerville, only 16 years here, but I'm fortunate to live in an older house that abuts the house in question, and in fact was originally owned by Minerva Phillips, who was the sister-in-law of Franklin Phillips, who was the original owner of the house in question that I guess Donald was just speaking of. I didn't realize that he was a councilman and alderman. I knew he was a chemistry professor at Tufts. So I think, I'd like to echo the fact that this house does have Somerville history, and that history is known and retained, and tearing it down would be a loss of that history. As others have mentioned, just the architecture of it is, in addition to being beautiful, significant. That square turret is unusual. The architectural shingles, the art glass, though it's currently hidden behind some, I guess they're plexiglass. You can still see them, the art glass windows from the street. They're quite striking. As far as, I don't know what the history was for splitting 213 and 211. Where I guess it was originally owned by one family. Certainly when we purchased our house, Tony and Jesse Zeffirano, was a father and son who owned those two buildings. So I don't know the history of splitting those into two separate properties, but it seems to me that when the property changed hands this latest time, the new owner must have known there was a risk into buying a property that is split that way, and doesn't seem like a justification for tearing down this beautiful house. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sarah?
All right. So I don't see any additional hands raised for public comment. Charlotte, should we go through each person and just unmute them and see if they have any comments to make?
This is Charlotte speaking. It may be easier to unmute everyone and request that you only speak and state your name if you would like to make comments, and otherwise please stay silent or mute yourself. And that way we can make sure that
Everyone's captured.
do it slightly more quickly. Yeah. So I'm going to unmute all participants. Again, if you don't have anything to say, please either mute yourself or just stay silent.
And if you have already commented, no need to comment again. Any additional comments?
It sounds like no one has any additional comments.
Sarah or somebody on the staff, can we just know how many members of the public are attending today?
May I ask who's who's speaking, please? Because we
John
need to have that for the record.
It's John Bunzig again. I just was curious how many people are attending.
Number of people attending are 9, but that also includes the applicant's attorney, and Adam is one of the current or former property owners here as well, or no?
Adam Dash speaking. That's a good question. I don't know because I can't see who's on the list.
Very good. So there's a total of 8 attendees, 9 with the applicant's attorney.
Thank you.
I see Jim Kahn has raised his hand. Jim? Jim, do you have a comment? Jim, can you unmute yourself if you are muted?
This is Charlotte speaking. Jim, you may be having the same issue that Donald had. If you switch your audio from using the computer audio to using your phone to call in, that may work better. So as a reminder, to do that, you go under the audio tab. It should show you as using computer audio. You'll want to click on phone call and it'll give you a phone number, access code, and PIN to type in so that we can unmute you and let you speak.
Well, while we're waiting to see if Jim calls in, Mr. Dash, did you have something else to add?
Adam Dash again. Well, I think I've heard the comments, and I think that they're not entirely unexpected. I would note, obviously, whatever happens here, we're happy to work with staff going forward to do whatever we need to do here. But no, I understand the comments. But as I said, it's just unfortunate the way that the properties are laid out. I would note my clients did not lay out the properties in this fashion. They've been like that for some time, subdivided. I don't know when in the midst of time that occurred, but or why it occurred or why they did it in that oddball way. But that sort of puts the building in a bit of an odd situation. So we will, be listening in on the rest of it. If any questions, happy to take them. Otherwise, I understand.
Well, just to add to that, Adam, this is Alan Bingham speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Just further towards, adjacent to these 2 structures is a cluster of 3 buildings, which have previously come before us for demolition review by the same applicant. You may or may not be aware of this. And they were found to be not significant. Now, 2 of those buildings face the street, as does 211 Holland Street, but it also has a flag structure at the back of it between those 2 buildings. So when I look at this, because they came from the same applicant, I'm thinking that the applicant is looking to redevelop this site by demolishing these 5 buildings and using that site for some form of. Now, while we can't manage or it's out of our purview as to what replaces a building if it is demolished, we have worked with other people in the past to preserve a building where the site was threatened over the loss of a building. And one of those was in Somerville Avenue. I think it was 511 Somerville Avenue, was it, Sarah?
Like 587, perhaps, something like that, where it was brought to the front of the lot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which was a little cottage. And we worked with that. And I know Eric Parks was intimately involved with this, where that building was kept and the new structures were built around it. And actually the applicant ended up with more condominium space that he could sell on the redevelopment, because he actually ended up also with the original structure, which they moved to a new foundation at the front of the lot, was previously at the very back. So as an advisory and consultative body, we are in a position to be able to offer supportive help and advice as to how the goals of an applicant can be achieved while still preserving the historic nature of the city. So I'm saying this for your own edification because I'm not sure if you're aware of all this that had happened in the past.
I do appreciate that, Mr. Chair. I did represent the Silvas regarding the other properties to the left back over the summer, if you recall. So I
thought you did.
Yeah, no, I did. I do recall, and it was the same similar situation where the lots were weirdly subdivided with buildings in the front and on the sides, and the way the new zoning is laid out, the way the parcels are laid out don't really match with the new zoning, and that's part of the problem with these parcels. Now I understand this house isn't the same as those houses, but
correct.
The question, and to be honest, I don't think the client fully has an idea of exactly what's going to happen here at the end because the new zoning is complicated, and with COVID things have been slower. But there's certainly a desire to do something here because these lots just don't mesh well, and this does not match the new zoning at all. So the question of whether or not that's possible is something I will take back to my client and let you know, or let staff know. And as you know, I've always worked with staff on these sorts of situations going forward, and sometimes we can work something out, and sometimes we can't. But we always try.
Indeed, I'm just putting it out there for you.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Right,
Mr. Chairman, we can try Jim Kahn one more time.
Good.
So I see that, I guess maybe you've called in, I'm not sure, Jim, but you have to put in your PIN. That's why we are unable to hear you still.
This is Charlotte speaking. Jim, your PIN can be found either we've sent it to you, so it should show up as like a notification from this program, or if you go under the audio tab, it should have all three numbers, the phone number, the access code, the PIN, type them in that order.
I'll give you about a minute or so. So anything else that you want to discuss in the meantime before you close the public comment portion? Mr. Chair?
No, did any of the commissioners have anything they'd like to add to this? Eric, you're on mute. I can see your lips moving.
You don't hear me?
Now we do.
Can hear you
Yeah,
now.
we do now.
I don't know, I was unmuted both times, but I'm taking notes, and just because there was a man named Ken who left a comment, I don't have a last name, I just need to infill some information. Do you have that?
What was your question?
A man named Ken who made a comment, I don't have a last name for that person for my notes, keeping the notes here. Somebody have his last name, but he's, tell me.
We had John Bunzik, sorry if I mispronounced your name, Michael Panis, Jim Kahn is who we're waiting to see if he can speak, and I believe we've also heard from David Warzala.
We've heard from Donald Kahn.
Donald Kahn, excuse me, yes.
Okay.
Jim, are you able to communicate?
This is Charlotte speaking. Jim, you're unmuted.
Jim?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, good.
Yay. Heavens have opened.
Yes,
Go right ahead.
I had a heck of a time trying to figure it out. Yes, I live at number 20 Claremont Street, and 211 Holland Street has been a beautiful landmark from, I look out the house and I can see that beautiful Queen Anne house from my porch. My family's been in Teal Square area since 1910, and that house has been, a beautiful landmark for my lifetime anyway. And it'd be a shame to have it torn down and put in the dumpster. And moving it would not be helpful either. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so do we have any other hands raised? Anybody else would like to speak from the public?
No other hands are raised. If you want to close the public portion, you may.
Yes, I think that's what we'll do. We'll now close that public portion of the hearing. and come back to the councillors for, sorry, the commissioners for further discussion. So what I'm hearing is that the commissioners have had a good look at this, as have I, and we see this as a property of some significance. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to put this to the vote is to be preferably preserved. So we're going to vote on HBC.DMO 2020.21 211 Holland Street for the status of preferably preserved. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I'm going to do a roll call. That's Adam,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Robin,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
and I say yes too. So that's 5 affirmatives. So what I'd like to do now is to discuss the findings. And for those who are listening, these are the reasons why we have found this to be preferably preserved. And we, as I said earlier, we follow the guidelines of the Secretary of the Interior and the National Park Service. And what I have here is that this is a Queen Anne with a unique square turret. It's in its original envelope, massing, and the details are largely intact with some interesting glass windows, original glass windows on the upper floors. It has extensive shingle details, which are unusual, and it's in good condition. It's consistent with a group of houses on that end of the street, and the setting is important because it's a commanding property in a commanding position. Is there anything else we need to add to that? I'd like to add in, however, that it is really the Phillips House. It was owned by Professor Phillips, who was a chemistry professor at Tufts and also a member of the Somerville City Council. So it does have an association with a historic personage within the city. Are there any other findings that the commissions would like to add to those that we have already discussed? Okay, hearing none, what I'd like to do is I'd like to put that to a vote on the findings. All those in favor for the findings, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Once again, do the roll call, which is Adam,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Robin,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and I say yes too. Okay, so Adam Dash, we found it to be preferably preserved, and they're the reasons why. As you know now, that this came in before the change in the ordinance, so we have a 9-month window in which to negotiate a meeting of the minds as to what that preferably preserved means. Okay,
Adam Dash, yes, understood, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
thank you very much. Okay, and I'd like to thank the members of the public who came and participated in the meeting tonight, in the hearing, and also those that sent emails that could not attend. Those emails will go into the record. With that, what I'd like to move on to other business. We do have on the agenda minutes from October, but I believe the minutes weren't completely finished. Sarah, is that correct?
Correct. I never received the final nicely tabulated minutes from Caitlin, so I'm trying to get those from her.
Okay. So we'll leave that till December?
Please.
Okay, good. So we have 2 other things. One is the, Caitlin was the secretary, as we all know, and she actually moved out of town. So she could no longer be a commissioner and hold that position. So we are looking for a new secretary. I'd like to ask if there's anybody in the commissioner group who would like to raise their hand to take on the role of secretary, which would be until the next meeting where we elect all the members, which would be, I think that's May, is that correct, Sarah?
Correct, correct.
Right. Is there anybody who would take? because here's our other
I can do it.
option. Sorry?
I raised my hand. I can do it if nobody else is banging down the door to do so.
Yay,
Adam.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks,
It's not an onerous role. I actually took the minutes from the last meeting that we had, which was that special meeting, and Eric's taken the minutes from tonight. Otherwise, we'd just go on a round robin.
I'm happy to do it.
Thank you.
We should vote to formalize that too, Mr. Chair.
Yes, we will.
Awesome.
I'd like to put it to the vote that we elect Adam Wiley to be the secretary for the Historic Preservation Commission, holding that post through to the next election of officers for the commission. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I'll just do the roll call once more. Adam?
I guess I abstain. Or I'll vote for myself.
No, you can say yes.
You can vote for yourself.
Yes, then.
Eric?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Robin?
yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And I agree. So thank you, Adam. You are duly elected.
Great.
Thanks, Adam.
Congratulations.
Duly subjugated. Thank you.
All right. The last item on the agenda for us tonight is the CPC update. And as you know, Caitlin was our CPC representative. We will need to elect a new CPC representative. But I stood in for the last meeting with Caitlin and worked with the CPC, and there's another meeting tomorrow night because we're at a critical stage of funding approvals. So what I'd like to do is go through some of these things with you and just give you a sense of where things are. As far as we're concerned with historic preservation, because as everybody knows, this concerns open space and affordable housing as well. But I'll just look at what we're doing on our particular lot. We had 181 Broadway house come before us previously to do windows, and that was an advisory role, because any property that's is going to have any work done by the CPC that's going to be qualified for funds needs to come before us for advisory comment. And we basically approved that they could have new windows put in the front. Somerville Museum, we're looking at doing some mold remediation and some care for the properties they have that are currently in storage. And now is an ideal time for them to do this because they're actually moving things out of storage and doing this because they're putting in the new elevator and changing the access, which is something that was approved by the CPC and by the Commission. This is something that's probably reasonably important because it's something that would cost less to do now when they're moving things out while work's in progress. Unfortunately, that basement area leaks, it's got high humidity and things are deteriorating. So we're looking at that. It's also in the Somerville Central Library, there are some carved bas reliefs in wood which have been preserved. And they're looking at being able to mount these in the library on the stairs going up to the top floor. And we're looking at that. This is a restoration project. They were downstairs before and they were bumped and damaged. They've been restored and now we're just looking at mounting them. Grace Baptist Church came before us. We've talked about Grace on many occasions and the ongoing issue. We'd approved it previously and it's been approved for 2 previous years for CPC funding. And it's still in within the scope of what we had approved. They're basically looking at improving the access to it. The Grace Church no longer really functions as a church. It's mainly a community center. However, it is also a church. And the other one that's of interest, by the way, Grace Church is also a local historic district. And then we come to the Broadway Winter Hill Congregational Church bell tower, which we know as Vida Real, which is that on the top of Winter Hill, that square bell tower church, which looks rather remarkable. And it's also on the National Historic Register. And they had applied to the CPC for funding to replace slate and on the bell tower and repoint the stone and brickwork. Unfortunately, they didn't come before the commission first. However, we're looking at that with a perhaps that we can negotiate with them, because they'd initially applied to use a replacement material that simulates slate. Obviously, that's not on as far as we're concerned, nor in the historic register is concerned. But they've agreed to slate, and we're looking at that as being something that we could do a certificate of non-applicability for going forward, but they still have to come before us to discuss it, and they still have to comply with the rules. So that's basically where we are. And of course, there's also in the funding for this year, there's some of that funding has to go towards repatriating part of the bond debt that was taken out for West Branch Library as well. So that takes a chunk out of it. We ended up with about 2.5 times the funding requests that had been asked for over what the funds we had. So some people have to sort of move back just a little bit from that. And one of those is going to be the Peabody House down just off Mystic Avenue, down by the park, which we'd approved previously, and they'd applied for something which was going to be actually maintenance. And as you know, for CPC funding, maintenance does not apply. So it's for restoration work only in our examples, and for access and things like that. So it's very specific. So that's where we are with the CPC. I've been working both with Sarah and also with Judith, who chairs the CPC committee, to make sure that we get this right, because this is coming up tomorrow night. That's just generally an overview. There's a heck of a lot of detail underpinning all that. But I think we've nicely worked through most of the details, haven't we, Sarah?
Yes, absolutely. No, I would agree.
Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't. I think that was a good summary of everything that's going on. And I think that sometimes it gets a little challenging, I know, for applicants when they're looking at doing something that might not be maintenance under CPC, but is maintenance under an LHD, or isn't maintenance under an LHD, but is maintenance under CPA. So it gets a little challenging for them sometimes, and sometimes you really have to tease through it. But we work with them really as closely as we can to get them on the right track before they get to the presentation point.
Yeah. Many of them don't understand the sequence of the process either. Like coming before the commission, before they go to the CPC.
That's right. And I think for those that are local historic districts as well, they forget that they have to come in front of us. And so sometimes I don't hear about it until I see that there's an application for CPC funds. So even though they are in LHD, they have to come in front of you for an advisory review, even if it's something that I as staff have been allowed to sign off on by you all. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to that stuff to make sure that we do it properly.
And as I said, I'm only standing in on this. We will be looking to appoint one of the commissioners to the permanent role. This is a role that Dick Bauer held before Caitlin, and I'm just the interim person handling this. This is something that would, because she was leaving, and she was leaving at the end of October.
Right.
It was something of some urgency. So I took that on, but as a commission, we will need to put this to the commission and elect somebody who is going to be our CPC representative. And that's something we'll need to schedule, Sarah.
That's right, yes, because so I will put that on the agenda for December, if that's agreeable, because we are required to have a representative. So, and the good thing is there are term limits, so you can't serve forever.
You serve for 2 terms only.
That's right.
Okay. 2 consecutive terms, it says.
Yes.
It doesn't say you can serve for more than that. So for instance, we could re-elect Dick, but you can't serve for more than 2 consecutive terms.
Indeed, really. Well, now that Dick's not
Really?
here, maybe we should put him up for it.
We'll put it on the agenda for December,
I will add
all
it.
right? Because I think that will then work. Any questions, my fellow commissioners, on that?
Thank you, Alan, for doing it in the meantime and stepping in.
That's all right, no problem. All right, so that comes to the end of the agenda, folks. So is there a motion to close the meeting?
I'll-
To adjourn the meeting.
Rob Roberts moving to adjourn. Is there a seconder?
I second the motion.
That's Ryan. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
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 Okay, meeting is closed. Thank you all. Appreciate your inputs and help.
Thank you all
Thank you,
very
Alan.
much.
Stay well.
Night,
Have a
everyone.
nice Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you, you
Yeah,
as well.
happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.